Nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What is the main role of your organization here in Madeira?
Well, SDM, which stands for Madeira Development Company, is a company which has been incorporated with the purpose of developing and managing the international business center of Madeira. We currently are a 100% public company, and amongst our responsibilities, promotion of the International Business Center of Madeira, to attract companies into Madeira, and also to manage the IBC in order to develop it and to increase the impact that the IBC has in the local economy. The International Business Center of Madeira is a program of regional development. It was created in the late 80s. It has the pre-agreement of the European Commission. It is a set of laws, of incentives, which are aimed at attracting companies into Madeira in order to develop the local economy, to bring additional tax revenue, but especially to contribute to the diversification of the economy and to create qualified employment in Madeira. It is an attempt to avoid Madeira being too dependent on one single product, which is tourism. It's a complement to tourism.
And by your forecast, what's going to happen in Madeira in the nearest 5-10 years in terms of infrastructure projects, different businesses come in?
Yes, well, there has been a huge investment in terms of infrastructure in Madeira, which has been funded by the Portuguese, the Madeiran authorities, but also by the EU. And this means that we have a recent extended airport, we have a new commercial port, we have a very efficient network of roads in Madeira, and especially there has been a huge investment in terms of telecommunications infrastructure. In fact, Madeira is a hub for international fiber optic cables, and which means that we are now prepared to receive international companies in the telecommunications sector, in the software development areas, and so on. I expect these investments to continue. I see that the moment now is to recuperate from the effects of the pandemics. This means that the tourism sector has been hit very hard by the pandemic. And the IBC of Madeira has been helping in counteracting that impact. The companies within the IBC of Madeira have been very interesting complement to tourism, a way of compensating for the economic downturn that Madeira has suffered, because Madeira is essentially a touristic region. So what I expect is that the IBC continues its role, its objective of complementing tourism as one of the pillars of the economic sectors in Madeira.
I found out that Madeira promote themselves as a digital nomad destination.
Yes.
I would say New Palo Alto here near the Funchal. So could you explain how it works? So why Madeira promoting this?
Well, what has happened is that there was already an interesting community of digital nomads throughout the world. And what the pandemic has introduced is this view that it's not necessary perhaps to work to a fixed working place every day. So people are now more aware that it's possible to work remotely. And what Madeira has done, what the Madeiran authorities has done, is somehow take advantage from that new perspective and to attract professionals, especially in the ICTs sector, into Madeira. And what we have to offer are several aspects. One is European Union integration, a mild climate, beautiful scenery, safety, good infrastructure, especially good telecommunication infrastructure. And we have been communicating that to the international markets, and we have been able to attract a significant amount of people, digital nomads, into Madeira to work remotely. And from the contacts we had with them, they are quite happy to be in Madeira. Everything is nearby, everything is well put together. The program has been very well designed, and we expect to continue to be able to attract further professionals into Madeira to set up for a while and to work remotely from Madeira.
What kind of cooperation you have with this community? Could you make any examples?
Well, there is an entity which deals closely with them, and they facilitate everything. They facilitate the formalities to set up in Madeira, whether it is a place to work, whether it is a place to live, and they communicate with them on a daily basis to facilitate their integration into Madeira. Also with activities for the weekends and to support and to feel welcome.
And how the government supports investors and international businesses here in Madeira?
Well, the International Business Center of Madeira is the most important tool we have to attract companies. It is a regime which has been designed specifically for international operations. What we want to do is to make Madeira a platform for international companies to use to do their international transactions. We are looking specifically into non-financial activities. We are looking into trading, shareholding, intellectual property structures, but also into the new technologies sector. And what we have to offer is, in addition to a very attractive tax regime, is operational conditions. The infrastructure, which I already mentioned, and which is state-of-the-art, supporting services from several corporate service providers in Madeira, a local university which is very good in terms of forming new professionals in the ICTs areas, but also in business and administration and so on, and the good infrastructure with full access to European Union markets, the euro currency which offers stability, and also the fact that in normal times, when we don't have the pandemics, we have international flight connections to most of the major capitals within the EU. And also we have this pre-approval or pre-agreement with the European Commission, which adds a factor of stability which is very, very important. This means two things. It means that the tax regime will suffer no changes because it has been pre-approved by the European Commission. And it also means that for the investor, it offers stability. One of the major concerns of investors is whether or not a jurisdiction which they are looking into offers stability and security, and we can also offer that because this pre-approval by the European Commission means that there is a number of years in which they can enjoy the tax benefits without having to expect any changes that will take place. So stability, transparency, regulation. In fact, this was one of the key decisions when the IBC of Madeira was created, was to include all of these activities within the Portuguese and the EU legal systems, which means that these companies are not offshore companies. Madeira does not offer a tax haven situation. These companies are fully Portuguese. They can apply the European Union directives, they can apply the Portuguese network of tax treaties. So the only difference between a company in the IBC of Madeira and a company within the Portuguese general regime is the level of taxation, which is less within the IBC of Madeira. Everything else is equal in terms of regulation, in terms of supervision, and in terms of transparency.
And bank access as well.
And bank access as well, of course.
Okay, what is the portrait of your clients?
We have several types of clients from different types of sectors. I would say that the most common structure in Madeira, the most common type of activity would be the international trading, in which Madeira is very, very interesting. We have companies who use Madeira as a platform to import from outside of the EU, from South America, from South Africa, from Asia, and then use Madeira as the trading platform into the EU markets. We have companies who manage intellectual property structures. We have companies in the ICTs, companies who develop software, who develop apps for several different applications. We have telecommunication companies, and we have companies providing general services such as consulting and marketing and so on. So there is a wide array of activities which can benefit from setting up in Madeira and using Madeira as a platform to do international transactions.
A lot of companies are relocating to Cyprus, such as IT companies, to Malta as well. Tech companies also are looking for relocation for California because they can find some venture capitalists there and even do some pitch in Starbucks and find some interesting people over there. Dubai are also considering at an international hub for businesses. What is Madeira offers?
Well,
can we compare with the Dubai, with the
well, there are
other
similar offerings on the table. I think that what at the end of the day makes the decision is the specific circumstances of every investor. What we have to offer is EU integration, is the pre-approval by the European Commission, so the stability factor, which is very important. It's the very competitive tax regime, the very competitive operational costs, and sometimes the proximity with Portuguese-speaking countries. For example, if you are investing in African Portuguese-speaking countries, it makes sense to use Madeira for that. So on a case-by-case basis, Madeira could be the better choice. What I think distinguishes Madeira between other jurisdictions is the fact that Madeira is an outermost region of the EU. And this tax regime that we have has been approved by the European Commission on the basis that Madeira does in fact need to diversify its local economy. So it has, I would say, the blessing of the European Commission, which means that all the tax incentives, all the advantages that we have to offer are fully abiding and compliant with the EU guidelines and even with the OECD guidelines. And that brings stability to the table, and which is something I think it's quite unique that we can offer to our clients and to our investors.
And how Madeira promotes this special regime and these opportunities into the globe?
We have several different initiatives. We are very keen in organizing our own promotional events, which we think it's the most direct, the most efficient way of reaching our target audiences. And by that I mean we organize our own events, which can be a roadshow, for example, which can be organizing a seminar or a conference, or even participating in international seminars or conferences about relocation of companies. We have our own digital ways of promoting Madeira, either through our newsletter or either through our presence in LinkedIn, for example. And we also organize events in Madeira, and we bring our clients or investors into Madeira, which has the added advantage of allowing potential clients to get to know the local reality, which I think is very important, because when they arrive to Madeira, they see that the infrastructure is in place, that Madeira is a very pleasant place to live, and that there are full supporting services in Madeira, and it opens up the idea that Madeira could be a possibility as well.
And what is your target audiences? Which countries is your target?
Well, Europe has been the major source of investment into Madeira, EU countries, but we also have non-EU companies setting up in Madeira, especially from South America, Latin America, South Africa as well, a few North American companies as well, particularly for activities which want to expand into the EU, and they use Madeira as a base to do it. But we also have companies mostly from the EU countries, for a question of proximity, a question of continuing to be inside the EU, but with a few added advantages in terms of taxation, in terms of operational costs.
And what about CIS countries, such as Russia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine?
We have quite a few Russian clients, and from Ukraine as well. And again, the idea here is that they want to get into the EU, to access EU markets. And Russia has been traditionally a very important market for us. And we go very often into Russia to promote Madeira.
So someday we will invite you on some conferences there. Okay, and could you make an example? What kind of businesses from Russia or Ukraine especially came here?
Well, from Ukraine we have several situations of trading companies who want to access the European Union markets, and they have been using Madeira to do that. Russia is a bit more wide. We have Russian companies which invest in energy. We have Russian companies who use Madeira to make investments into Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa, and but they also act in real estate, in the tourism sector, and the trading as well.
How many companies were established here in Madeira?
At the moment we have around 2,300 entities, and this includes services companies, industrial companies, and also shipping activities. We also have a shipping register in Madeira, which has been very successful in recent years in attracting vessels from around the world, but mostly from Europe, and which has been growing at a very steady pace. So in total, 2,300 entities approximately, which is a very interesting number, I would say, considering the size of Madeira and considering that we are more recent jurisdiction compared to others. We have been doing this for less time, so I think it's a very interesting number.
And what is your expectations in terms of increasing the number of the companies?
Well, even last year, even though there was the pandemic, we still managed to grow. So what I expect is that with the stability that we have to offer, the conditions in terms of operational aspects and in terms of taxation, I expect to continue to grow at a steady pace. I think that within the next years, we will continue the growth that we've been having in the last years. Expect to get to a very interesting number by 5-10 years with a continuous growth.
Mm-hmm. But on average, what is your expectations?
It's very hard to say, but I think that we can expect around 100-150 companies a year between now and the next 5 years. Of course, it also depends whether or not the international economy will grow and how it will recuperate from the effects of the pandemics. But I think this would be a reasonable number to expect.
Mm-hmm. And what is refusal rate of getting this special corporate tax regime?
It's not very significant because before companies apply to set up in the International Business Center of Madeira, we make an evaluation of whether or not the activity is permitted or it's even welcome.
So it's like a due diligence process?
There's a due diligence process. So when they come to submit the requests, they already know whether or not they will be accepted, because we do this job firsthand, which is to make sure that the activity is allowed within the IBC of Madeira or is welcomed, or if there is any difficulty in licensing the activity.
Mm-hmm. Could you make an example of a few interesting cases of relocation?
We have been particularly successful in startup companies, in the new technologies. Yes, in the new technologies. And what happens is that Madeira has several advantages. One of them is that we have an incubation center, so they grow, and as soon as they are ready to benefit from the tax regime, they license themselves within the International Business Center of Madeira. We have been attracting many interesting companies in the shipping sector. Ship registration has been very successful. We have been attracting vessels from Germany, from Holland, from Switzerland, from France, from Spain, and so on. We have companies also who have migrated their distribution centers into Madeira from several countries in the world, because it makes sense, it's more efficient to do it through a Madeira company. So there are quite a few different examples.
Could you name a few companies, some interesting cases which came?
For example, in shipping we have huge companies such as Holdendorf or Maersk, for example, which are our clients for many years.
From Denmark?
From Denmark, yes. So we have, especially in the shipping sector, some very interesting names. But the fact that we have been concentrating in startup companies, it means that for the time being, the names are still not very well known. This has been our aim, is to bring new business into Madeira, because it also offers the possibility of the companies to grow with us, and to, in that way, growing here in Madeira means that they will be more likely to recruit locally and to have a further impact in terms of economy in Madeira.
Here in Madeira, there is a digital nomad village, I would say.
Yes.
And why this particular location?
I think for several reasons. One of them is that Ponta do Sol is a particularly warm place of Madeira. It's a very nice weather there. It's a microclimate. It's a very beautiful place. It's very quiet. And it has very good access to the capital city of Funchal in terms of road network. It all combined to be a nice place. And I think that the people who were implementing the projects, when they got there, they saw the place, they fell in love with the place, and they said to themselves, this is where it all should start. But like I said, the community is growing, and now they are also populating other areas of Madeira.
The best place to live here is Funchal because of infrastructure, international schools, so everything over there. Real estate cost here is very high comparing with another locations. So are there any locations which government want to support, want to develop here?
Yes, in addition to Funchal, the nearby cities are also growing in the last years, and increasingly a number of people are moving out or going to those places to live. One of them is Caniço in the east part, the other one is Câmara de Obros on the west part, and they have the advantage of being very close by. We are talking about 15 minutes drive into Funchal, and therefore they are still close to Funchal, to the infrastructure of Funchal, to the services in Funchal, but the housing costs are less there. So those are areas which are growing and which are an alternative to Funchal.
What nations cover the majority of expats here?
Expats in Madeira are mostly German, British and French. There's a smaller community of Italians as well, but these three are on the top, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.